All right, we will begin. And so we are live on YouTube. Welcome to everyone. Um, Wanted to start with something that I've gotten a question about this week from Derek, and I see Derek just popped on. And this is what he had asked about. It says, hold on, let me move this. This is from Ezekiel 36:25. We'll take a look at this, and this was the question. I will sprinkle water on you and shall be clean from all your uncleanness, and from all your idols I will cleanse you. Ezekiel 36:25. Is this talking about baptism, clean water? And then Mom was curious about what the word is for sprinkle. I think that definitely, and I didn't answer this yesterday because Aaron and I were out woods watching. I won't call it hunting necessarily, but we enjoyed a beautiful morning in the woods. There was a doe that had the kindness to scamper by just out of range, but couldn't have done anything with the doe anyway. But such as hunting. But it was a beautiful morning in the woods. But that's why I didn't have time to answer this. So it's a very good question. Ezekiel 36:25. And this is God. If you look at the context, look at the section there, it is about God restoring Israel, bringing her back after the captivity in Babylon. Okay. And all of that, talking about making her clean again. And I think that definitely with our New Testament perspective, we can see there an obvious allusion to baptism. Now, there are those who, from their theological perspective, are not going to see that clear picture of baptism there necessarily. But when you look at what it is God says that he will do, and we'll start back from 24, he says, let's see, how far back do we want to go? '24. We'll start there. Otherwise, we'll just go into too many things. I will take you from the nations, again, that nations concept, right? Those serving the other gods. I will take you from the nations and gather you from all the countries and bring you into your own land. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean from all your uncleanness, and from all your idols I will cleanse you. And there are things there when you look up that word, and here we will just pop up here. I think probably, let's see. This is that word. Zarak is for to toss, strew, sprinkle. When you look at the different references for it, it's going to talk about making people, in one context, making those who were ceremonially unclean clean again by applying water. But we definitely have that allusion to baptism, and where I really see that, I mean, the water picture is there, right? And water making clean. And remember, in baptism, what we have, it's not just water, it's water connected with God's word. And the power to do the doing is in the word of God. That's where the miraculous power lies. And if we take baptism and make it into an act of obedience that we perform, all the mighty working of God is taken right out of it. And I always use the picture, and this cup has a lid on it, my Arctic thermos cup. Hopefully you can see that all right. If this cup doesn't have the lid on it and I turn it upside down, I take it and do with it what it was not designed to do. I do something else with it. I turn it upside down, all the good stuff comes out. And in baptism, we've got all kinds of good stuff that God and his mercy and his might in his goodness, he works faith. He bestows his spirit on us. And that spirit changes us. It takes us and it makes us into something different. And one of the most beautiful things in baptism is that he does that for little ones. He does that for little ones who can't even come for baptism themselves. They're brought by their parents. There is nothing that they do to merit, or there's no way it can be construed that they are meriting this grace and mercy being bestowed upon them. Okay, with that in mind, listen again to Ezekiel 36:25. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean. From all your uncleannesses and all your idols, I will cleanse you. And that's the context, the framework in which God would talk about idol worship. It was uncleanness. It was whoring after other gods and all of the kind of filthy picture that brings with it, right? But what is it God does? I will cleanse you. I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you, and I will remove the heart of stone of flesh. And rather, I will, sorry, I skipped over. I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes and be careful to obey my rules. You shall dwell in the land that I gave your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I will be your God. That oft repeated promise, that blessing that is what? It's one of the last things talked about in the book of Revelation with that Edenic restoration. What is it to be God's child ultimately? It's to walk in his grace and mercy, to be in his presence. So I think here we definitely have an allusion to baptism, New Testament baptism, that means of grace, that means whereby God makes us his own. And I believe it is the most pure picture of God's grace that exists in the scriptures. Good question. Thank you for asking. And sorry I didn't get back to you sooner, but
it's okay. I figured you were busy. No worries. Thank you.
Then when I got back, I'd gotten up at 4 a.m. I conked out. I was gone. I slept like a baby.
I got into the meeting late. What was the question?
The question is that reference in Ezekiel? Derek was reading there, Ezekiel 36:25. Is that talking about baptism? You know, where it's talking about clean water and the things that it does. Because there we've got Ezekiel talking to a very rebellious house of Israel way back 600, 700 years before the coming of Christ and the institution of baptism that he gives. So that's what the question was. Is that talking about baptism, even though it predates it by quite a stretch? And again, I love questions because it allows us to focus in on the things that matter to you. Not that all of this doesn't matter to you, but you know, when you've got a question, when there's something you're trying to figure out, you know, I usually won't make you wait until Sunday morning and answer it there. Sometimes I might, if I think it's something that would be good for everybody, but I am always more than happy to answer Bible questions. Because there is stuff you come across and you're like, what is this talking about? And I'm not getting it. And I love to be able to help you out with that, and it makes me happy. All right, so we are in the book of Exodus. We are talking about today the 10 commandments, so-called 10 commandments, and we'll get into why I put it that way. All right, so setting way back from Ezekiel. We are at Mount Sinai. We are we are here with Moses is going to be spending a lot of time on Mount Sinai. We have this picture of sacred space, the delineation of who can go where, kind of in steps. You know, this zone is for everybody. This zone is just for the priest. This zone is like the Holy of Holies in the presence of God. And only Moses is going to go there at God's direction. So this picture is there. We've got the presence of God manifested in a big way. And the people's reaction to that is, oh my goodness, you talk to us. We don't want him to talk to us. We'll die. That fear of the holiness of God, which is an understandable reaction of sinful flesh, knowing that it has no business being in the presence, the holiness of God. And mentioned this last time, I don't think that there is anything that can be done even today with CGI, with surround sound, to give us the sense of what the children of Israel experienced there at the base of Mount Sinai. Because you can make some really awesome effects. You can shake the theater with sound. You can do all these awesome things. But what's lacking is the real presence of God. And I think that in and of itself creates awe. We see that in the scriptures again and again. It creates awe, it creates fear, all of those things. And with that in mind, we always need to look ahead to that time when we're given that gracious picture of God wiping every tear from our eyes. How much more personal can you get? He's right there with you. He wipes the tears away from your eyes. Revelation 21:3, I believe it is. And we're going to see something very soon about the interworking, and it's something we always struggle with. The gospel, the good news, the grace and the mercy, and the law. And the law is designed to scare you. It functions to scare you because it tells us what God expects, what he requires, who he is, who we are to be like, because we were created to be, remember this, and this is going to tie in with stuff we're talking about here today. He made us to be his imagers. You know, we talk about being in the image of God, but and this is more Heiser stuff, right? It is better understood if we view it as a job description. What am I to do? Well, I am to image God. I am to represent him. I am to represent him to Deb. I am to represent him to Brandon. I am to represent him to Chaz. I am his representative here. And therefore that defines it. It tells me how I am to, how I am to live, what I am to do. That's my job. I am his imager. I'm not just in his image, and that's pictured in righteousness and holiness, those very things that in Ezekiel we just said that saw that God promises to give us through what? Bestowing his spirit. What happens in baptism? His spirit is bestowed on us. Jesus was baptized, the Holy Spirit descended as a dove. That changes me, and it's shown in righteousness and holiness and knowledge of God and his will for us. And with that, because that heart of stone, and we talk about, man, he's got a hard heart. Man, he's hard-hearted. He maybe worked for somebody like that, played ball for somebody like that, had a parent act like that, hard-hearted. God says that he removes that heart of stone and replaces it with a heart of flesh, right? A soft heart. a soft heart. God is kind to us. He's gracious to us. How do we represent that? By being kind and understanding to others, by forgiving others as God forgives us, right? All of these things are part of being in his image. And what the 10 commandments or 10 words, whichever way you want to talk about it, we'll talk about that in a minute, go into it. What they show us is, how do we do that? How do we do that? On one level, it's a fearful thing. You've got to do this. For the unbeliever, the law of God serves only to show us our sin, only to show sin, all with the aim of it leads you to say, wow, I can't do this on my own. I'm a mess. I need help. I need the Savior. The gospel shows us the Savior, right? Okay, enough preamble. And God spoke all these words, saying, we'll stop there. God spoke all these words. The 10 commandments, that phrase is somewhat of it's not a bad thing, but what it says is words. And when you take that through and translate it, and things went through Greek, what you end up with is deca being 10 in Greek, logoi being words, decalogue, the decalogue. And then that ends up being commandments, the 10 commandments. Not all of them are imperatives. A command by definition has to be an imperative, okay? And I think that, there's more to it than just the imperatives. We call it the Decalogue. For the Jews, guess how many commandments, how many words they have? 13. They've got 13. There's this neat little chart, got this from Heiser a long time ago. We number the commandments differently. We've got the way the Hebrew Bible does them. And you scroll down through here, there are really 13, okay? Then you've got the way the Reformed, the Anglican, the Greek Orthodox Church numbers them. So that's going to be Baptists, Presbyterians, Pentecostals, Methodists, and the Greek Orthodox Church, how they number them. And then you also have how the Roman Catholic Church and the Lutherans number them, okay? By training and background and theology. I'm a Lutheran. I like the way the Reformed and Greek Orthodox Church does the division better. It makes more sense. Now, I'm never going to shift in that thinking in my mind because I memorized the commandments the way I memorize the commandments. Where things get goofy, to my thinking, in the Lutheran / Catholic way of numbering them, and hopefully you can see there what's on your screen. When you get down to the coveting commandments, the Lutherans divided into two. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, male servant, his female servant, his ox, his donkey, or anything that is his neighbor's. Never has made sense to me that gets 2 commandments. It's all about the same thing. It's sinfully wanting somebody else's stuff. That's what it is, okay? So that gets split, whereas in the Reformed way, you shall have no other gods before me is 1 commandment, and you shall not make for yourself a graven image, a carved image is 2, okay? And we're splitting hairs. It doesn't matter how we number them. Just like it doesn't matter how the Bible is divided up into chapters and verses. There are places where we see, yeah, that could probably be done better if it was done differently. You need a system whereby to file it away and make use of it. That's really all that matters. But whether it's commandments or the 10 words, the 10 concepts, whatever you want to think of, it's fine either way. Now, more introductory stuff here. it's always pictured, and it's talked about the two tablets. The two tablets. When that's pictured, if I were to go over and grab the catechism, the Lutheran catechism that most of my kids learned from, when it shows the picture of the commandments, it's going to be 1 through 3 on one tablet and 4 through 10 on the other tablet, two tables of the law, because that's the way it's divided. The first 3 commandments are about our relationship with God, how being his imagers is to be put into practice. Okay, that's the first table of the law, relationship with God, like up and down, right? And the second table of the law, when it starts to talk about parents, murdering, marriage / adultery, stealing, lying, that's about our relationship with other imagers. So the first table is about our relationship with the one whom we image, whose image we represent, whose image we bear. We're going to talk about that in some detail. The other is about how we treat the other imagers, right? And think about it that way. If I'm looking at how I treat the other imagers, man, that puts it in a different light. These other people are imagers of God also. They have this same important status. And it doesn't matter. This is really important. And it's an insight into sinful rebellion. It doesn't matter if they are imaging God faithfully or not. If I am an unbeliever, if I reject the word of God, want to have nothing to do with it, I'm going to live the life of a hedonist, just be a sinner, indulge in self, whatever. I am still imaging God because that's my role. That's what was assigned to me in creation. That's what I was created to be. That is what is expected of me. And when you think about that, I'm living that way and I'm imaging him. Gives some perspective on sin, doesn't it? I am representing God by living a debauched life. Whoa, that's heavy duty. That's heavy duty. And someday, as a steward of his image, think of the stewards who were given 5 talents, 3 talents, 1 talent, 2 talents, 1 talent, whatever it was. Eventually, they're called in to give an account. Okay, what's the ledger look like? Oh, well, here's the ledger, and it doesn't look so good how it lines up. We got a lot of red there. Give some insight into what imaging God is. Believer or unbeliever, faithful or unfaithful, you are imaging God. Okay, back to the 2 tables, the 2 tablets. There were 2. It says they were written on front and back. Okay, interesting, and we could really get down in the weeds here, but when a covenant, just like, you know, the SALT II treaty or whatever peace accords, the Sinai peace accords, whatever, both, you know, when they do those fancy signings, picture Jimmy Carter, Menachem Begin, and Anwar Sadat signing those documents, or Reagan and Gorbachev signing those documents. They're both signing a copy on the USS Missouri with the surrender of the Japanese Empire to Douglas MacArthur. There was 2 copies signed. Both MacArthur and the representatives of the United States and the Japanese representatives, they both signed both sets. And both countries got a copy. Okay, that's the way these things work. Because hey, you've got it in black and white, I've got it in black and white in this setting. But when you know, you've got King, and I'm gonna try to read this name. It's over here. If you guys want to laugh as I try to read this, King Shupolumiasas, or of who was and King Madawaza of Mitanni in Upper Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
They had a treaty. Well, what would they do? And there are examples of this throughout ancient history. It was on tablets, and they took those tablets, each king, King Shupi, we'll call him for short. I'm sure his friends called him Shupi for short. And he was a Hittite. And King Mahdi, they each took their copy of it home. And guess what they did with it? Guess. They took it in their temples and put it at the feet of their gods. They took it in their temples and put it at the feet of their gods, in a box, in a chest. So two tablets written on front and back. One of the problems with the first three commandments being on one side, even if you do the first five and the other five on the other side, word wise, it's thrown way out of whack because the fourth commandment is so long that it would be really hard to fit everything on. It would have looked lopsided. So what we have more than likely is that there were two tablets, one for one party, one for the other party. They were written on front and back, but because they were together, because the people of Israel served and were loyal, covenant loyalty to their God, and there is only one God, we're going to get to that. They were both copies put in the ark, the box that was on top of it, the two cherubim, wings folded down, the seat of the throne of God in his tabernacle, his temple. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. That, I think, makes the most sense as to why there were two tablets. Okay. All right. So what did he say? Verse 2, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Let's start it from the beginning here. Let's make the point. What matters here? What matters here? He is it. All of that stuff, and we talked about when we were going through the book of Exodus earlier on with what he was doing with Pharaoh. And what did Pharaoh say? What did Pharaoh say? Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh, and what did he say? Who is Yahweh that I should listen to him? Who is Yahweh that I should listen to him? So how does God start his covenant with his people when he said, I'm going to show him who I am. I'm going to show that I am Lord of all, over all those other gods. He starts out with, I am the Lord your God. There's only one. There are other gods, but he is species unique, right? There are other divine beings that he created. He is uncreated. He is above it all. He is it. And that was shown that he was above all, King of kings, Lord of lords, God of gods, in what he did in leading them out of the land of Egypt, because this is only 3 months since they left. That's who I am. Don't forget that. That's who I am. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. I am above it all. That's me. That's me. And I'm looking for ahead. I thought quit doing that. The references. Exodus 6:7, I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God, who has brought you out from under the burden of the Egyptians. Exodus 7:5, the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand against Egypt to bring out the people of Israel from among them. All tied together, all tied together. This is only 3 months separate from when these things had just been brought to their consummation, their climax. So where does he go right after that? You shall have no other gods before me. And it can be before, it can be besides, prepositions are kind of fluid concepts before, besides, other than, that I'm it. You shall have no other gods. What is allowed for here? And I taught the 10 Commandments. I don't know how many young people I taught the 10 Commandments to in catechism class, in confirmation class, how many adults I taught the 10 Commandments to and talked about. And I wish I would have known this stuff. Not that what I was saying was all wrong. It was just was missing some stuff. What does verse 3 presuppose? Nobody wants to take a poke at it?
That there are other gods.
There are other gods. There are
Fake
other gods. I just kicked their tails back in Egypt. One set of them. There are other gods. There are other divine beings that you can worship. You're getting ready to go into the land of Canaan, where you've got Baal being worshipped, and the language that remember how we talked about the polemic language and how God would through his spirit, through Moses, phrase things and cast things. What was one of the pokes he was always taking at the gods of Egypt? My mighty hand, my right arm. What was part of Pharaoh's title as the representative of God here on earth? The mighty hand, that 5-part title thing. So God would take swipes at them by appropriating that language, because it only rightly applies to him. When we start to see that the language change to being polemic, warring against, taking pokes at Baal and all the stuff in Canaan, it's going to be phrased differently. Guess who Baal was? Guess. Baal was the god on top of the mountain. That was Baal's big thing. He was the one up on the mountain. He was the big kahuna. He was the cloud rider. He was the one who rode in the clouds, right? So he's just taking on a different set of false gods. But he never says that there aren't other gods. He doesn't say that idols aren't representing those other gods, right? He says, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, we haven't read it yet, but he's saying, I showed you that I'm above it all. I'm above what's above, I'm above what's here, I'm above what's below. So why in the world would you use any stuff from this world or a representation from this world, be it a snake or a cow or a chicken or a duck or whatever? Why would you think that you can adequately represent me with that? That's why idols are stupid. Yeah, those other gods, they want to be represented with a cow. They want to be represented with whatever, a serpent, whatever. Not me. I'm bigger than all of that. I'm the creator of all. How can you represent the uncreated, the eternal, the all-powerful, omnipotent, omniscient, all of that with a creeping thing, a crawling thing, something from the sea, something from under the ground? It doesn't make any sense. That doesn't represent me. Why would you bow down as my imager to something that doesn't represent me? Only bow down to me. I am the one and only. I am the one and only. No one else is like me. You shall have no other gods before me. And spend a lot of time talking in the first commandment, which is how this is numbered in my scheme. The first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me, about all kinds of material things and things of this world and all that. And that's I will say that's a small part of it. What we shouldn't do is make the mistake of thinking that when I get all wrapped up in the stuff of this world, then I am in effect worshiping the lords of this world, and they're real and they exist and they have power and they have control. They have dominion and might in the heavenly places, in the spiritual realm, right? Those things that Paul talks openly in Ephesians about warring against, why don't I want to be in love with the stuff of this world? That's why. That's why, because it's not about him. It's about all of them. It's falling into their scheme of things, their perspective. That's where that comes into play. But don't deny that those gods exist. Don't deny that they still have sway. Don't deny that, and better yet, understand that the people of this world who get places, who are ruling, who have power, how do you think they get there? How do you think they get there? How do you think it works out that we have elections and it's like watching people climb out of a clown car? Doesn't matter who they are. They're doing their master's bidding. They're doing their master's bidding. And we need to understand that. And that's how this world operates. It's no different than Canaan. It's no different than Egypt. It's no different than Babylon, Assyria, Greece, Rome, blah, 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 blah. And they understood back then full well who they were serving. Today, we're just duped into thinking something else. I would say this, the Satanists, at least they're upfront and honest about what they're doing. I'm not giving them any credit, but they're real about who they're serving, okay? So for us, verse 4, you shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children of the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandment. Okay, all kinds of stuff to talk about here. We need to go back to something we've looked at before, that the cosmology of the people of old. And I made it a little bit too big here, I guess. You got God up in the heavens. You've got the gate of heaven. You've got the firmament. And then, when it comes to the flood, there was the waters above the firmament and the waters beneath. But there is a three-tiered cosmology, their view and understanding of how it worked. And again, I will say, and this is something I've been noodling on and thinking about and goes through my mind every night when I step out and take the dogs out and look up at the stars. Yesterday morning up in North Georgia, when Aaron and I got there and got out and we were getting ready to go sneaking into the woods, looked up at the stars, just absolutely crystal clear, gorgeous. I could have stood there for a long time and just looked. But we view this as the ancient cosmology, okay? I'm not so sure. I think that we have to be open to this can be a more accurate representation of the way things work than we think. I think we might be, and I don't know where to go with this at this point in time. I think we might be, I think we are mistaken to just discount this as old ancient people's stupid thinking. Well, you know what those old ancient people were? They were a whole lot closer to the source time-wise than we are. And they weren't stupid. So, and who is it who tells me how our world works? Why do I believe everything that I believe about that stuff that I look up at and see when I take the dogs out at night? You know why I believe it? Because NASA tells me. And if there's one thing I know about NASA, I know this: they're liars. They're liars. They can't explain how they got to the moon and got through the Van Allen belts that supposedly exist, those radiation belts. And when you see them duck and dodge on that, it's just hilarious. And when you know who the people are who started NASA, it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. The Alan Parsons was a the key disciple of Aleister Crowley. Alan Parsons is the guy who started the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and they did all kinds of perverted stuff out in the wilderness, these rituals and things. You know what that place is now? Area 51.
51.
They thought through sex magic they were opening up a portal to another dimension, another reality. Do you know who all the scientists are who started NASA?
Russian.
German, and some Russians, but Germans.
I thought von Braun was
Nazis
Russian.
brought over an Operation Paperclip.
There you go.
Werner von Braun was a Nazi. He was an actual Nazi, a member of the party. You know what's on Werner von Braun's gravestone? I'm gonna pull it up. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above, which is the firmament, firmament proclaims his handiwork. And I don't believe Werner von Braun was a believer, but I think that's very interesting. And we'll get into the NASA thing here in a minute. This isn't a truther moment. I'm just saying the cosmology that the people who are a whole lot closer to the creator God and the timeline than we are, and what we believe is widely divergent. What the answer is to that, I don't know, but I'm not just going to blindly bow down to the God of science when I know who the servants of that God of science are. And if you don't know what Operation Paperclip was, in the late 40s, after World War II, we brought over 153 of the worst god-awful Nazis imaginable and put them to work in what became the CIA and NASA and the military and all kinds of the whole Manchurian Candidate, the mind control stuff came from the work the Nazis had already done in the concentration camps. It's just wacky stuff, but it is the truth. So I'm gonna take what they teach me with a grain of salt, and I'm going to think about it for myself. Okay. So about the heavens above, and you just don't make an image because none of it can represent me. If the other gods wanted to represent them, those lesser beings, fine. They want to be a snake, fine. Not me. They want to be lizard people, fine. They want to be a cow, fine. Not me. You shall not bow down to them and serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. The core word there talks about being red-faced. Red-faced. And to understand this, and this particular form of this word is only used of God. The way, there are all the different forms as far as, there is a root for the word, and all these different forms can come from it. They're all related. But this form, the way it's used, is only used of God, but it could also be used, but it's not. It could also be used of a jealous husband. A jealous husband. Somebody's making oogly eyes at your wife, guys. What do you do? Or your girl. What do? You bow up. You get ticked, right? Think of it even further along, okay? A jealous God, mine. You are mine, not anybody else's, okay? You're my imagers. Don't use being my imager to image and represent and serve other gods, these rebellious gods who are warring against me and hoping to undo everything I've done, right? Don't be like them. Don't serve them with my image. This is a passage that is often misunderstood, and it doesn't need to be. It's a beautiful passage. Visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me. God isn't saying that you get punished for your father's sins. He's saying every last one of them that hate me, those who hate me, to the third and fourth generation, all of them, their iniquity, they bear that. It's on them, and they will be punished because God is just. If you don't understand, if core to understanding who he is, he's just, he's fair. He's fair. You rebel, you pay. You rebel, you pay. But here's key concept. Put this one away. It's a big picture thing, okay? God's love is always bigger than his punishment. God's gospel is bigger than his law. He leads with the one, the gospel. He doesn't want to punish anybody. God desires that no one, he desires that all men be saved and come to a knowledge of the truth. He doesn't want to punish. He says, please, please, please come back. Don't make me do this to you. You know, it's like a parent watching their child going down a road that's going to lead to their harm. It's like, no, please don't do that. Come back. But showing steadfast love, chesed, mercy, unshakable. Mom will always love you, but showing steadfast love to thousands, and that can be understood rightly in the context here, thousands of generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. So when he's talking about the rebellious who will pay, he only goes to the third and fourth generation. He doesn't want that to be the biggest part of the picture, to thousands of generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. Steadfast love. You know, the hymn Abide With Me. Thou on my head in early youth did smile, e'en though rebellious and perverse meanwhile, thou hast not left me oft as I left thee. On to the close, O Lord, abide with me. He's always faithful, I'm not. He's always good, I'm not. He always takes me back and I don't deserve it. And he does everything he can to steer and guide and direct and keep me safe, like the good shepherd that he is. All right. We said we'd get back to NASA. Just interesting. It's ever since Hebrew 101. I don't even know what the course number was. I don't remember. This has fascinated me. And you're going to say, what does this have to do with NASA? You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Take. What does the word take mean? I mean, again, these things can have so many meanings. I'll take you along. I'll take that away. I'll take that name for myself. It all involves pulling things, you know, toward yourself or how you use it. That's the way we think of it. The word for take is, you know, we'll bring this over here. That word right there, nasa. Nasa, that's nasa. That's an N, that's an S, because the dot's over here instead of over here. If it was over here, it'd be sha, nasha, but it's nasa because it's over there, and that's an aleph, it's an A. Nasa, it means to carry, to lift up. NASA, you know, they come up with those, what do you call it when they make a word out of National
Acronym.
Aeronautical and Space Administration? What is it?
Acronym.
An acronym. You know, those they come up with those. They can make them be whatever they want, right? You just pick the right words. You can make it into anything you want. Isn't it interesting that a bunch of Germans who have the history with the Jews that they did, when they went to make things that were supposedly, you know, going up into space, up into the heavens, they used NASA to lift, to bear, to carry, to take up. Just, I remember when I learned that vocabulary word, I was like, holy cow, NASA. That's fascinating. That's fascinating.
I also thought of it in a way like it says to take, but also to take away your trust or your beliefs. Like when I saw that part as well. But
yeah, there could be a lot of stuff in there. There can be a lot of stuff in there. But And that was the NASA tie-in. Okay. And I wanted to make sure that carried through. It doesn't have anything directly to do with this commandment, but change the word. Change the word. One word. And how do you read this now? You shall not bear the name of the Lord your God in vain. Does that sound like imaging? Representing me. You bear my name, right? Brandon, you bear my name. You got Smith at the end of it, right? Don't forget who you represent. It's like a joke from Psych with the dad all the time. Who do you represent when you drive your motorcycle? Taking it to an absurd extreme. But we represent God. You bear his name. And then in the fulfillment of God's plan of salvation, what do we get named? Christians. And we're told, where was it? I'm drawing a complete blank right now. Was it up in is up north, Damascus? Is that where it was, where they were first known as Christians? We literally bear his name. Okay. But you shall not image the name. And this is important. I haven't talked about this. The name, Shama, the name. The name is talked about, is used in the Old Testament as literally being synonymous, equal with God. That's him, the name, Yahweh, the name. And someone's name is what? It's everything that represents them. When I say Alyssa, I think of everything I know about her, who she is as my daughter, who she was as a little child, who she is as a grown woman and a wife and a mother, who she is in all, it's all that she is, right? We get really upset when somebody does something to do what? Harm our name, right? My reputation is the most important thing I own. My reputation needs to be tied in with serving the Lord. You shall not bear the name of your Lord your God in vain. You have a purpose in doing that. It's not a meaningless thing. You don't just get to do what you want to do and be who you want to be. What did I just sound like? I think I sounded like what the world teaches young people there to do. Do whatever you want to do. Be who you want to be. And it's not that there isn't any individuality in our life of bearing God's name. There certainly is, because he made us all different. He made us all different. We all have different gifts and personalities, and he's happy with all of it. He's happy with all of it. We're to use that, who I am, who you are, to represent him, to spread his word, to spread his name, to spread his fame, to tell the nations who belong to those dispossessed sons of God who he is. That's what we do. And that's not a vain thing. It's not an empty, meaningless thing. Yeah, now is using God's name like it's nothing, does that fall into that? Yeah, but it's pretty far down the list, really. Not that it's not important, but the important thing is who I represent, how I'm living, what that means, how I understand it. So you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain, who bears his name. Don't bear his name in vain. It gives a deeper perspective to all of it. All right. We're going to have to stop there because we only have 3 minutes. There's no way I can do the Sabbath in that short of a period of time. But just back to the beginning here, how is it he begins? And this ties right in with what we were talking about there with the second commandment, who he is, what he has done, what that tells us about him, and what it tells us about all the other gods and all the other people who worship the other gods. We are to be, and in all these things that we've just talked about here, fall into this. God is other. He's other. He's other. He has sacred space, that space where he encounters us. It's other. It's different. Take off your shoes, for the ground on which you are standing is holy ground. He is other. He can't be represented by anything in this world, but he is represented by you. Now, how cool is that? Seriously. How seriously cool is that? That God chooses, it pleases him that you bear his name, that you represent him. And that means that what you do, it all matters. It all matters. And way too often, far too much of how we view ourselves, our self-worth, who we are, how we're perceived, all of that is shaped by those in this world who are not serving the Lord our God. They're serving other gods. So why in the world? It'd be very easy for me, because it's so different in a different setting, and it's easy to see things in a different setting. It's a lot more challenging to see it when it's outside my window, and I see it all the time. But if I were to go back in time, and I were to be there with Ezekiel, and I were to be there with Jeremiah, or whoever, and say, yeah, the 450 prophets of Baal, away with them. I don't want to have anything to do with them and what they think about what matters and how things ought to be done and how we ought to live our lives. I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less. I need to make the same distinction and application to the world here now. What all those people care about, not that I don't care about them, I do. I want to represent and bear God's name, image him to them. I want to do that, but I want to do that without allowing their perspective, their take, to shape and impress and mold and control me, right? And that's the challenge. That's the challenge. Living as a believer in this sinful world. What did Jesus say? Back to the good shepherd and the sheep. He said, behold, I send you out like sheep among wolves. I send you out like sheep among wolves. Be innocent as doves and wise as serpents. That's the challenge. To be innocent, faithful, true imagers of God, and be wise enough to see where the danger lies and how that can affect me. And why is it and try this. When you're feeling down, when something's bothering you, when you feel overwhelmed, right? When that's going on, stop and think about, what framework am I thinking in? Am I thinking in the framework, the construct of this world and the things of this world? Well, then, yeah, I'm going to be freaked out about money. I'm going to be freaked out about my job. I'm going to be, troubled and worn down by all of these different things. Well, why am I thinking within that construct? Should it have sway over me? No, it shouldn't. When really hard things come along, when I was thinking about this, because I've been thinking a lot about Asher, and with the burns and everything he's going through and his family, and I don't even know him, but I know who he is, and I people to whom he is dear are dear to me, and he's a child of God, and I'm thinking about what he's going through, and as a parent, you think about it differently. I'm thinking about a parent and going through that, and the thing I've been thinking about is this: that if there's anything that I learned going through what we went through in losing Jonathan, is that in the face of the storm, you just hold on. And sometimes it's all you can do to just hold on. And I'm talking about holding on to that rock, who Jesus says he is the rock, on which we're founded. And the way I think about that is I went through it for myself, as we went through it, but just for me personally, is you hold on to that rock, and the waves pound and the wind tears at you. And there are all the questions and all the pain and all the hurt and all the suffering. And it's okay to go through those things. It's okay to go through those things. You're going to feel those things. You're going to have those questions. Why? And that's okay. But you just hold on. The worst things are, the more important those blessed, simple truths are, that God is who he is, that he blesses us, and he takes care of us, and that those truths supersede what I'm experiencing right now. And by superseding what I'm experiencing right now, they translate it to a different sphere, the spiritual realm. And weighty, horrible, awful, painful things tend to weigh us down, and we literally get down. When we get down, where does your head go? Your head goes down. But no, I want to look up. I want to look to the heavens. I want to see him seated on the throne, and I want to see him with my son Jonathan there next to him. And I want to see him looking down on Asher and his family, going through what they are going through, and hear him say, I've got this. It's okay, because I'm still Lord, and I'm still in charge, and I still love him. And I'll get him through it. And through it, it'll be a blessing. And I can't understand that. I don't know what that road looks like, but that's okay. I don't have to see where the road goes. I just need to hold on to him while we move down that road. And that's just a moment by moment thing, right? Kind of a ramble, but I sat there looking off into the woods, that beautiful setting yesterday, and waiting for opportunities to arise, and they didn't come, but it was a beautiful morning, and I had opportunity to think about things, and that's what I was thinking about. Okay, we are going to shut down the feed on YouTube. Want to thank everybody who's there. If you're there, please leave a comment, give a thumbs up, do something, because that helps spread the word. It makes YouTube more inclined to have this pop up in people's feeds. And please feel free to